People have asked me what Laurie and my canning recipe is for our canned green beans that we do. And this method is for storing them. You can store them up to, we've been told, 10 years. We've never stored any canned goods that long. Usually 1 to 3 years is all it lasts at our house. Besides, we only grow enough green beans to last 1 to 3 years. So we'll go over the methods for it. We grow our own green beans, usually about 3 rows in our garden, and we have a large garden, is usually enough to last us 1.5 to 2 years. This is our canning year for green beans, so we'll go ahead and go through the steps on this. Try to do it step by step to make sure that you have all the information. First, again, we grow our green beans, but you can go to any farmer's market, one of the Amish farms, or down to the grocery store and get your green beans. There's different types of green beans depending on which ones you usually like eating. We usually grow the string beans or the runners. Seem to be the best. The kids love them. And once you eat your own canned green beans, you won't go buy the store-bought metal cans of green beans because there's no comparison in the flavor or the texture from that. But again, first go get your green beans. Make sure you soak them. We usually soak them 3 hours to overnight in cold water in a large wash basin, or we use the sink. What you're soaking it for is to make sure that you get all of the bugs and the dirt or the environmental trash that's out there off of your green beans. Make sure you're using cold water. If you use hot water or lukewarm water, it can cause them to start to wilt overnight or start some bacteria to grow. And you're going to want to make sure there's no bacteria at all in your green beans when you can them. And that's the same way with washing your jars. It's best if you use as hot water as you can stand hand washing them, or put them in your dishwasher on the hottest setting and make sure that you sterilize those jars. You can even boil them in water with a little vinegar solution to make sure that you sterilize all of those jars. Again, that bacteria can make you very sick and you don't want to do that. Again, we use the quart size jars. This lid or loader, I'm not sure the proper name for it, was something that my mother-in-law used to use that she handed down to my wife, and we use those for loading the beans and other things that we can into the jars to keep from making a mess by using just a spoon. After you let your beans soak, of course you had to snap them before you soaked them. I left that step out. Make sure you snap your beans before you soak them. Break them off in the size that you want. Again, there's different sizes. That water's still a little hot. You can get them smaller, larger, however you want to get them in your jar. The smaller, the more they fit in, but don't break them so small that all you're getting is little tidbits of beans. Doesn't need to be quite that small. After they're snapped and soaked, put them in water and start boil them on the stove. Time it once it starts boiling and boil them for 5 minutes. Once the boiling is over, turn the stove off and the burner off, and you can move it to another burner that's not hot. That way you can start to stick your green beans, again, stick them inside of your lid there and let them drop down in. And use your water to fill up your jars up to almost the top of the neck. Leave about an inch, inch and a half or so room in the top of the jar for the air to come in. Using that water is also going to add flavor and keep the good flavor into your green beans versus if you just pour plain water in. Also, while I'm looking at that and think about it, make sure you check the tops of your lids if you've reused your jars from the previous year, and look for cracks around the top of the lid and the lip of the jar. If there's cracks, it's not going to seal properly when you add your lid, and when we get to the step of pressure cooking it, that lid will let air come in or go out, and it's not going to seal properly. And if you look around this ring that Lori's showing you, that's a rubber gasket that will actually seal. Make sure that you wash and clean these too. Yeah, they're coming from the store, but
so there's no damages.
there have been, as she said, make sure there's no damages to the lid, but there's been machines and people handling it. And again, you want a sterile process if you can. Once you use that lid, you can reuse it to close your jar for that year, but you cannot reuse the lid again to reseal in another batch that's pressure washed. You have to throw it away. So go down to the store. They're not expensive. Go to Dollar Store, Walmart, your local food stores, and pick up your lids for your jars. Back to the cooking method. After you've already boiled them, turned your stove off, and filled your jars up, again, fill your jars up to about an inch headway or so in that. Use plastic utensils or something along the side of the jar to move your beans around, and that'll let you get more beans in your quart jar and fill it up. Our family of 4, even when my son was here before he went to the military, our family of 5, usually 1 quart would do 1 meal, sometimes 2 quarts depending on if we had people over, and we filled those up to make sure that they were pretty full. Again, my kids actually love to eat my wife's green beans. Make sure that you get all the air bubbles out of your beans from moving them around. Those air bubbles will rise up to the top and get it out. And then next, you're going to want to put, if you do the quart, you're going to want to put 1 teaspoon of canning salt. We use the Morton kosher salt, however you want to pronounce that, and put 1 teaspoon in each quart. After it's already filled up. That way that salt's soaking down on top of all your beans, and it goes down inside the water, and it'll cover the whole inside of the jar versus settling on the bottom if you put it in before you put your beans in. If you're going to do a pint, you'll want to break that down to about a half teaspoon versus the full teaspoon for the canning. Next, you're going to want to put the lid and the rings on your jar. Make sure again that you sit the lid down on top of the lip. Don't press down on it, just sit it down, put your lid on, and snug your lid. Don't over tighten your lid, because when you add it to this boiling water step next, it's going to cause it to start to draw that ring down, and it's going to get too tight to take it back off, and you'll cuss and complain because your lid was too tight.
Yep.
Next, you're going to want to set your water, put all of your quart jars in your pressure canner. Again, usually we're doing the pressure canning method, not the hot bath. This is for pressure canning. You're going to want to fill the inside of that canner with all of your quart jars sitting side by side in there. Don't stack them up, and fill up to about, I'm thinking it takes, the last time we measured, about 3 quarts of water, but you're going to want to fill it up, and don't overfill over top of your jar lids. Just stick down inside of there. Again, this size, completely full. We used about 3 quarts of water in the canner. You're going to want to set, as you see, up to a high heat or medium high that my wife uses to get the pressure cook method going. And you're going to want to leave it sit there. Again, this is sealed shut. Once this is sealed shut and you start heat, do not open this. The later step when we get to it, if you open this while it's hot, it can cause steam burns or blow the lid off. Pressure cookers will seal. You don't have to be afraid of the pressure cooker. It has a ring inside. It locks down and it will be tight. And we'll talk about this little guy here. This is the weight that helps you know as your process is going how long it's going. You can see this little button over here. When there's no heat and pressure in there, that'll actually be down. While you're cooking this, it's going to start producing steam before you put the weight on. Once the steam starts coming out for a steady about 10 minutes, 11 minutes. My wife has the 10-minute method. She makes sure that we let good steam come out constantly for 10 minutes. When the steam starts coming out, again, set your timer for 10 minutes. When that 10 minutes is up, you're going to see this little button over here is going to pop up, as well as you're going to go ahead and put this weight. This weight usually comes with your pressure cooker. If not, again, you can go down to Walmart or something and pick that up.
The steam don't stop coming out.
Yeah,
It's just steady stream of steam.
as she's saying, that steam's not going to stop coming out. You're going to put that on over top of that nipple with the steam coming out, and it's going to keep cooking. You can hear that noise. Sounds like a small steam engine, a quiet steam engine. That's normal. That's the steam escaping out from underneath of the weight, and it causes the weight to rock. And you're going to let that keep rocking and let it cook for about 20 minutes. Some processes will say 25 minutes. Again, with the pints, my wife and I always do it about 20 minutes. And when that's finished, you're going to want to turn the stove off, remove the canner to another burner to get it off the heat source, and you're going to let that set again until this back button. That's the purpose of that little guy there. He's kind of like a timer. What it's doing is letting you know when the pressure is out of your pressure cooker. When that drops, then you can take your weight off of the top of the nipple, and I usually let it sit and cool a little bit longer just to make sure that we have all of the heat out of the pressure cooker. You'll twist, if you look, this arm here, actually, again, we're not going to open it because it's cooking. This arm will actually twist it the opposite way, turn it over, lift it up, and then you can remove your cans or your jars after it's cold.
When that falls, then you take that off and let it off for 10 minutes before you open it up.
Okay, my wife's correcting me a little bit. That's why I usually leave it set, as I said, longer, but my wife actually times it. Once that drops, she's saying how she times it is she'll wait for that to drop, then takes the lid off, and she actually times it for 10 minutes.
No, it's not the lid, the weight.
The weight's on top.
You take the weight off and let them off for 10 minutes. Then you can take the lid off.
And when we take those off, again, we'll set a towel down over on the countertop because we'll go through and can another turn. Usually we'll do 2 or 3 turns a day depending on how many beans we have. This is the first pick. We have enough just for this first batch was it. Do not touch the top of the lids when you take those jars out, and be careful. Those jars are going to be hot, and you'll actually see boiling juices and liquid inside of those canning jars from where it's been on this canning method. As she was saying, the towel that I was saying I used, double it over, set it on the counter, and just leave it set. And as the time goes, you'll actually hear the lid seal, and you'll hear a popping noise. That's the lid sealing down. Do not touch those lids. Leave it set. Usually several hours till they're completely cool. Then check and make sure that the lid's all sealed by pushing down on the top after the jars are completely cooled off. If you hear them pop while you're pressing on it, the jar didn't seal. You can either put them in the refrigerator and use it for that meal or the next day meal, or go through the canning method all over again. If it doesn't seal, you can't store them for a period of time because it's not sealed. The air will get in and you'll get bacteria and the beans will go bad. If you have any questions, add it to the bottom of our link here. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page here. We'll go through many other canning methods that we use with the spicy hot dogs that we use, corn. We're going to try to do some jelly and other items this year, and we'll keep adding. Hope you enjoyed this.